All right, so now we're ready for prime time. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third Tuesday of November, the Indian Education for All Across the Continent. We are doing science tonight with Melody Small. And Melody, you may take it away. I will go ahead and share my screen. So we'll be working a little bit in tandem here this evening. Okay, view slideshow. Okay. So you just tell me when to advance the slides.
Okay, no problem. Okay, my name is Melody Small. I'm a science teacher here at Browning High School. I've been teaching science here in Browning for about 9 years now. I did take a little break there for, I don't know, maybe a couple years, but I'm back now. Let's go back to that first slide there. I don't know if it's on a timer. Oh, it's going too fast. There we are. So I'm gonna talk tonight about the Traditional Ecological Knowledge, or TEK, and place-based learning, and also taking a look at comparing, contrasting, and finding similarities between traditional or indigenous science and Western science. Go ahead. So this is an activity I would always start out with for anybody that's joined. And you could just write your response on a piece of paper, or, type it, what have you. Or if you want to put it into the chat, I will put that up here. So a bell ringer, this is what I would start my class out with, and this is what I'm gonna ask of y'all to start out with. So the question is, I'll give you a few minutes to read that there to yourself. So starting out with a bell ringer, it just kind of brings in your students, brings in my class kind of into the focus and getting their minds right to do what we're going to do today. Sometimes it's not always straightforward as to what we're going to do as far as how the bell ringer is questioned. So for instance, this one in particular, it says, if a red house is made from red bricks, a blue house is made from blue bricks, a pink house is made from pink bricks, and a black house is made from black bricks, what is a greenhouse made of? And I see Mike's response there in the chat. It just kind of goes along with just what we're doing kind of today. And then you'll see it when it's put together here. So the answer for that bell ringer, we'll get to that here in a little bit. But I do like your responses there in the chat. Thank you for that. So we kind of been on the teeter-tottering with the AVID. We kept a lot of the AVID strategies in our school. There's a lot of different schools who are AVID schools as well, but it's just something that you could do. I kind of frame this around the AVID and Cornell notes. And the essential question behind this unit is, can indigenous knowledge be applied in conjunction with other systems such as science? And the key concept here is traditional native knowledge and versus Western science. Next slide, please. So short response, again, we're going to be writing, and it's just even just thinking, if you don't have strong writers, this would be a discussion that I would have in my class. This is something that I do at the beginning of the year, especially when you get those students who are hesitant, or the first thing they say is, oh, I don't like this, I don't know how. It's something to kind of grab them and to get them thinking and forward thinking. Let's stay on this slide though for a second. So in the chat there, if you want to write your response on the chat or in the on a piece of paper. So I'd ask my students, short response, but you're going to have to listen. You can write your response in your notebook. My students have a science notebook or interactive notebook. And the question is this: if you were to go pick any sweetgrass or if you wanted to pick berries, or if you were going to pick sweet pine, would you take everything in one area? Would you take it all? Probably not. Nope or no. So why not? Why would you not take everything in one area? Especially a particular plant or whatever you're trying to harvest. So we have a response that says leave some to grow back. Save it for the next person. Anything else? How much does one person really need though? Do you need all of it for just yourself? So it doesn't matter what age group I've always asked this question to. I've asked, third graders, fourth graders, all the way up to high schoolers. And no matter what, I always get the same 3 responses, just like in the chat here. Everybody always has the same response. And I think it's a beautiful thing. So they usually say you don't take more than what you need. You don't want to be greedy, along the same lines as don't take more than you need. But also you want to save some for the next person. And then you make sure that you leave some so it will grow back. If you take it all, it's not going to grow back. So think about, where does that come from? Go ahead to the next slide, please. So where does that come from? Really, where does that come from? Even if they're older or younger, they're going to sit there and kind of contemplate, where does this come from? Now, what it really does come from is what we call traditional ways of knowing. And with like TEK, and the definition of it is just understanding and passing down knowledge, whether it be for a few years to thousands of years. And a lot of the indigenous people here in Montana have passed on this knowledge, especially when it came to harvesting. If you ask any child, just about any student, even the most of the Montana natives will tell you the same 3 responses. When it comes to not growing back, you don't want to take more than what you need, and then you're going to save it for the next person. You will always get those 3 responses, maybe a little bit of variation, but that's the beauty about ways of knowing. Where does it really come from? For us, it is something that we're born with. Nobody really had to sit anybody down. I know personally, nobody had to sit me down and say, hey, you don't do that. You don't take everything. Somebody, I was always taught, usually like hands-on learning. When you go out with somebody, like an elder, your grandparents or whomever, and they teach you these things. A lot of times you don't even have to say anything. All you do is watch. So a big thing for our learning, and a big part of my learning as well, is kind of watching, looking, and kind of mimicking what you see, especially when it comes to younger people, smaller children. They mimic almost everything. But if you teach them young, you don't even have to say anything, because they're already born with this. And really, it just comes from observation, experience. And like I said, stuff that has been, I don't want to say stuff, but knowledge that has been passed down, whether, through epigenetics, throughout the generations. And then I like Jennifer's comment there. It says, and the person can be other animals too, saving some for the animals. Definitely. We kind of lived in a balance. if you ask any of your students, one of the things where you can piggyback off of this would be going into like the kingdoms, the animal kingdoms, and looking and comparing that, but we'll look at that here in a little bit. Go ahead to the next slide, please. So again, native ways of knowing the educational implications. So it's just really a lot of the tribals people, whether whatever tribe they may come from, they put a lot of importance on nature, and that and this kind of goes hand in hand with a lesson that you could do later when it comes to like the um, the food chains, or if you want to look at keystone species and things like that, is that there's an emphasis in the importance of nature that traditional and natives, indigenous people have put, and that our knowledge in when we pursue knowledge, that it has to be subordinate to everything else, and it has to respect the whole universe. And what that means is, to put that into perspective, especially for younger people, if you were to go get an apple, would you take the whole tree, or would you take just one apple? Something, that goes along the lines of not taking everything. So when we got the knowledge, when it came to traditional plants or medicines, we didn't destroy the landscape. We didn't destroy the food chain. We didn't take everything in order to gain all this knowledge. It was given to us. We gave back. It's kind of a balance when it comes to gaining and giving, things of that nature. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So in here, share with your group. As a class, we're going to decide what common sense means. Let's take a look at common sense. And this is where I would have them partner off, give them a few minutes within their table groups, if they're table groups, or maybe their side partner, and just talk and really about 5 minutes or so. And then we'd come back and collaborate as a whole and decide as a whole, this is what common sense means to us. So if you want to put that in a chat, go ahead and do that. Write it down on your piece of paper, put it in your notebook. What does common sense mean? So after arriving at it is, and that's kind of the beautiful thing about common sense. Is it really common? I guess it could be a way of doing things in a good way. Having the I don't want to say the sense, having the mind to do the right thing. Maybe it borders along the line of integrity, doing the right thing even when nobody's looking. So common sense is kind of a difficult concept, but we throw it around. Students throw it around, teachers throw it around, everybody kind of throws around. Well, why did you do stuff like that? Why do you do things like that? It's common sense. But when you really take a look at it and your students start to understand, common sense is not so common. Go ahead to the next slide. I think this is part, oh yeah, there we go. Keep going. You can stay there. So this is where we would define indigenous knowledge and Western knowledge. So indigenous Indigenous would be something that students usually say, oh, it's naturally comes from there, or it's a place that one originated. Usually my students like to say, oh, that's who I am, and it's kind of when you go back to that place-based knowledge, it's who you are, where you come from. Are you from that place? Go ahead and click there again. We're going to look at Western definition. Keep going, Jen. Okay, and then looking at the Western aspect. So the Western aspect is pretty wordy. It's pretty analytical. We can talk about the Western aspect all day as far as science is concerned, Western knowledge. It fits nicely in a box, whereas Indigenous, it's of or relating to, homegrown. Look I pulled up all the synonyms there. It's being native. Now, one of the things that I stress to my students, and that you can stress to your students, is just because we are enrolled in a tribe doesn't mean that we're the only Indigenous people within that particular area. Anybody, if they are from or they originate there naturally, whether it be a person, a plant, or an animal, you can refer to them as being Indigenous. And that's something that I really like to point out, especially for students who are in my class. And then looking at the Western, one of the biggest things I get from my students is, I can't do this. I don't know anything about science. And I tell them, I come from where you came from. I'm from the same area that you are. I can understand science. It's not having to choose between two worlds. I know on this particular slide, it looks like, on the left, you have Indigenous, and on the right, you have Western. You don't have to pick a side. It is not walking in two worlds. It's only walking in one. There are things that we believe in, and there are things that we can understand. There are things that we can learn. And we are all capable of learning. Go ahead to the next slide, please. So this is the actual assignment that I would do. So we're going to create a Venn diagram. On the right side, of the circle, we're going to look at Western science. That's going to be the title. On the left side, we're going to look at traditional native knowledge. And in the center of that Venn diagram, we're going to look at the common features. Go to the next one. Well, I think I mixed up that side. Jen, just go back. Okay, let's stay here. So this is the assignment. We're going to create a Venn diagram. And this is the big chunk of it. This is kind of where you want to, this is where you would monitor your students one-on-one. You would walk around the classroom. They're going to create this beautiful poster. We're going to put it into, throwing some art in there. We're going to think about the similarities. This is the hard part. When you walk into a room with 10 other people, or maybe even one other person, the first thing that your brain, and it's just human nature that we all do, is we're going to look at differences. How are we different? Those are easy. It's so much easier to point out differences. The hard part is taking a step back and looking at how you're similar, and looking at these two concepts, looking at how similar they are, especially for students who might be on that mindset where they don't know anything about science, when in reality, I just proved to them that they did, because this is something that they're born into. Their traditional knowledge, their traditional ways of knowing, it just needs to be pulled out. And then they would create this Venn diagram. So, you can kind of help them along with this part. I kind of give them a few headings when it comes to the similarities. Sometimes I might give them something like, Okay, let's look at the similarities for the both Western and the traditional. I could say, well, it's both a system, is it not? And then looking at the meat and potatoes of that particular system. For instance, it kind of it explains the world around us. So that can go into the common features. Um, Let me look at this particular. Okay, Jen, you want to scroll down to the kind of the last few slides there? Just keep going. We'll come back to that one. All right. So, and then I would, kind of throw some headings up there, and then we kind of work together at it, looking at and this here is where I would really concentrate on the similarities. Like I said, it's so much easier to look at the differences. We know that most of the time traditional native knowledge is holistic, has to do a lot with like spiritual, metaphysical, whereas Western is, like I said, more analytical. And then the goal is to finding universal truth. Now, I guess you can kind of debate on that, because a lot of my students would be like, how is that not a similarity? Why would it be on the right side as far as Western science? The goal is to find the truth. Well, the very simple thing is, especially from my understanding and the knowledge that I've gained, and the things that I've taught, but also learned through my upbringing, is that sometimes there isn't always an end to things. Sometimes you're not always going to find out. A lot of times we just do things because we were told that's how you do them. Maybe you don't always know the why. Like I said, maybe you don't always know the end, but it's just something we accepted. Whereas Western science, that's not really how it works, especially if you look at the scientific method. When you get it wrong, what do? You go back and you fix it. You change your experiment, maybe your hypothesis, and then you just kind of rework it. Whereas in traditional native knowledge, we're more or less just looking at just accepting, accepting if that happens, or if that was the result. We just something that we have to live with. So, and that could be in a debate. Like I said, this is not set in stone, but it's a good way to really, especially with students who are struggling in the sciences, to understand and put these concepts together, that they do not have to choose a side. There's only one world, but you can completely believe in what you believe in, and you're completely capable of learning. One of the examples I give for when it comes to that, when students are struggling, or they don't, they always question, why do we have to learn this stuff? So when we get to the theory of evolution, well, I teach that towards the end of the year in biology. A lot of my students will ask, well, that's not where we came from. That's not where we came from. And I said, are you talking about we as a human beings, or are you talking about we as the Blackfeet, the Amskapi Pekani? And usually they're referring to the Amskapi Pekani, which I understand. And so I break it up into saying, we're going to learn the theory, but I'm not asking you to believe in it. For myself personally, I learn things. I'm completely capable of learning, just like they are. So I believe in our creation. I believe in our Blackfeet creation. And I understand the theory of evolution. I understand how it works. I understand the scientific method and how they derive that theory. But nowhere did I say that I believed in it. So it kind of builds that connection with my students, to where it's not feeling like a force thing. And just like that similarity there, we always try to seek to understand the physical world. It's just another way to understand. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Keep going, please. Go. I should have put these in a better order. Keep going towards the end there, Jennifer. You're gonna see some student. There we are, student work. So this is kind of where we get with this assignment here. I have them build big posters. We use a lot of color. We do a lot of discussion. And then sometimes there's even debates here. So some of the similarities, for instance, for this class was life, death, time, and agriculture. I like on the right side there where they said Western science wipes everything out. Maybe true, maybe not. This is kind of where common sense comes into play. We're gonna jump a little bit around here, Jennifer. Go ahead to the next one. Again, student work, being creative. I try to connect those, one of those slides that we just kind of zoomed through was talking about the brain. So I incorporate a lot of art and color into assignments when it comes to especially projects. And it's just to connect the left and the right brain. If you want to go back up there to the brain. Yeah, this here. Thanks, Jen. So the left brain and right brain functions. This is why one of my students asked me, why do we always have to color? It's a traditional thing, especially the way I was taught. When I was young, my gram would not teach us how to bead until we finished a coloring book. I don't tell them right in the beginning. I usually kind of put it together towards the end. So when I was growing up, like I said, my gram, she would not teach us how to bead if we wanted to learn how to sew or do anything that had to do with any kind of crafts, especially beading. Not until you finished an entire coloring book and it looked nice, you stayed in the lines and you took your time. Now, I didn't understand when I was younger what her reasoning was. And maybe she didn't really know the Western aspect of it, but like I said, it's just connecting those left and right brain functions. But what that taught me was patience. She was teaching me patience so that when I started something, I would finish it, especially working on like big projects. And when it came to beading, or if I was sewing, that I would finish those things. So that's something I try to help my students with, especially in this day and age, teaching them a little bit of patience, kind of getting those old school teachings in there. Let's go to that medicine wheel. So again, teaching them coloring. One of the things I do a lot of project based in my class. This is just one of the beginning projects where I would help them pull from prior knowledge, help them pull from their indigenous ways of knowing. And it just kind of focuses on these four aspects. It's just kind of, this is exactly where our, I'm just having forget the word. When we're designing our lessons for our school, our district, this is the model that we use. We try to encompass all four of these realms here: the physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental. Coloring in a way helps when it comes to those crazy days, if students need to kind of detach, and they're able to do that. Because we all know, especially being educators, but maybe our students don't know, that these four things have to be in balance before they could really learn. So when we're doing activities, I try to do like a lot of hands-on things, and pulling from their creative side. It's just to kind of help them spiritually, because if you can help them and they can kind of detach from whatever's going on the outside, things happen at home, you give them a task, it kind of helps them focus less on the mental, kind of brings everything into balance. This is, I usually show this at the end of the year, with the left and right brain functions, and as well as this, when my students always ask, why do we have to color? But that's my big reason. A lot of them really, they change so much from the beginning of the year towards the end of the year when it comes to the projects, when it comes to putting out producing works of art. And thank you for that comment there. They are beautiful. The work that my students give me is amazing. And this is at the beginning of the year. I wish I would have put in some, and usually we'll come back to this. I wish I would have included the end of the year, what the Venn diagrams look like, because we always revisit this topic, going back to what did you learn, or what did you already know, and what would you like to know more of? We put it into that kind of focus, kind of revamping our Venn diagram to include the things that we've learned throughout the year. And the posters that are produced are just amazing. Okay, Jen, you want to jump to that unit organizer? So I have this here, some of the course organizers that I've done. Go ahead and go to the next one. So right here, oh, go back real quick. Sorry. Yeah, right here. Now, I've done one of these. I'm sorry I didn't include it with this particular lesson when it on Indigenous and Western science, looking at common sense and things like that. But what I like about this is I do a lot of graphic organizers with my students, especially note taking. I like the Avid style when it comes to note taking, but for a lot of my students, including myself, we're visual learners. To me, this just makes better sense when it comes to the direction of my teachings, but also just to put my thoughts into order. My students, I gradually, gradually release them, but I teach them how to do these. I teach them how to do graphic organizers. I teach them how to do note taking in this kind of format. And for them, it makes a lot of sense. Go ahead and go to the next one, Jennifer. So I just want to say thank you, Uzer. He was my mentor here when I first started. And then the artwork, the background, a lot of the paintings are from my very good friend. He's a local artist. His name's Lord Monroe Jr. Go to the next one. And I do have some other resources. I wish I could share my screen. I have like other lessons, especially when it comes to plant stuff. Everybody kind of knows me as the plant lady. I wanted to change it up a little bit to kind of show you what I do at the beginning of the year, and then kind of how I close the year out too with my my teachings. Does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns?
Melody, feel free to send anything to me, and I'll create a resource list that we can send out to Lisa. And Lisa, thank you so much for being here, and to Matt and Mike as well, so we can have them as resources. Also in the chat, I did put I can share my screen, and you can tell me if any of these books were on your list. I'm going to stop sharing here so I can. There, I have my script. I'm sorry, it took me a minute. Thank you everyone for your patience as we collaborated on our screen sharing here. I lost all of my visuals to function, so I was guessing where to go a lot of the times. But oops, let me stop my background. Otherwise you can't see. All right. So I'll have, these two books constantly within reach. And so the main book, Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, you can't do anything with Jennifer Statham in science without hearing about Robin Wall Kimmerer and braiding sweetgrass. And there is a new adapted version by Monique Ray Smith and for young adults. And this is what I pulled out the Honorable Harvest Principles from the young adults for my Ponderosa pine lesson, and which I'm not quite done yet. And Lisa, I am now like having that recollection. I'm going to send it to you, but I'm not done with it yet. I ended up changing it. I'm very excited about it. Another great one by Robin Wall Kimmerer is Gathering Moss. And then, of course, you had referenced in your presentation, Native Science, The Natural Laws of Interdependence by Gregory Cayete. That's a fantastic book. One of my very, very favorites, Blackfoot Physics by David Peat, and then Melly holds it up, and Recovering Our Ancestors' Gardens by Devin Mihushwa. And this is got Indigenous recipes and a guide to diet and fitness based upon Indigenous knowledge and models. So another really good one. I could go on, but when I saw Dr. Cayete's book in there and that you wanted to share resources, I'm like, oh, I happen to have all of these right here because I use them a lot. So Lisa, you're welcome to unmute and to ask any questions that you may have. We've got kind of a skeleton crew with Thanksgiving, I believe, and not realizing that schools would be out. So I apologize for the timing of this, but I'm really glad that you could present and that we could get a recording of it so we can share that. Do you have any questions? Anyone who's on the call, or any closing thoughts, Melody?
So I was trying to figure out exactly what kind of lesson. I've done plants for a long time. It's usually what and then I kind of was debating on to do some astronomy, which is actually what I'm doing right now in my earth science. We're looking at and I always start backwards. That's just how my brain works. We're looking at the universe, like, I go big and then go small, and then we'll look at like the inner structures of the earth and whatnot. Whereas the textbook is the opposite. But right now we're doing some Blackfoot the star stories. We're looking at Blackfeet skies, and we are BNAS program, but a star lab. So yeah, and I still have one of the originals.
Wow, yes, fantastic.
But that's just one of the things about when we're starting out. I usually get a lot of questions from teachers. What can they do when they're just starting out? And this is something that's really easy to incorporate, because it doesn't just have to be, set to a particular tribe. You could, like I said, it's place-based. It could just be from a particular area, or even like a family thing, when you're talking about the knowledge and pulling from prior things and the things that have been passed down. That's why I like this one. Like I said, I get a lot of teachers who ask what's a good way to start, and a good way to start is pulling from prior knowledge. Maybe it's knowledge that the students don't even know that they have yet, and that this is something that they really are grounded in, science and the way things are, and kind of the phenomena that happens in the world around us. We just have to help them connect the dots.
Well, I'm really excited to see you. Thank you so much for sharing all of what especially the student work. I think that's so powerful to see how how students can internalize it. And then of course your messaging where, you know, we can always learn new things. No one's asking you to believe anything. That's up to you, you know, and empowering students with their own sense of, you know, and permission to believe, you know, what makes sense for themselves. So wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Melody. And however you honor Thursday, I hope that it is meaningful and safe for you and your family, and for everyone watching as well. So thank you so much. And I will get a list of resources together, and I'll be putting that in the description of the video. So if you are watching this recorded at a later time, make sure to click on the description for this video, and you'll find the Google link drive for the folder with the resources for you. So thank you, everyone. It was wonderful to have this tonight, and I hope everyone stays well and safe for the rest of this week. And we will be back in December for social studies with Dylan Huiskin. So looking forward to that as well. Bye. Thank you.